Well, hi everybody, and welcome. My name is Robin Robinson, and I want to welcome you to Aries Wine and Spirits here in White Plains, New York. I've been in the industry for a number of years. I was formerly a brand manager for a small brand many times. That's actually how I got to meet Tony Russo many years ago here in this shop. And since then, I've kind of formed into a sales and marketing consultant and also an author of the Complete Whiskey Course, a comprehensive tasting school in 10 lessons, which I think you've got in your hands. And as you go through the book, you'll see that I'm covering the entire world of whiskey, from everywhere from Ireland to Scotland, the United States, and the rest of the world, the production, the history, all the kind of fun stories and the people who make the whiskey. So thanks for being here. And now we're going to jump in to a couple tastings of the beautiful Hodling line, and we'll go through each one of those as we hit them. Okay, thanks for being with us. We're going to kick this off here with our first whiskey tasting from Ireland. Now, all the whiskeys that we're going to be tasting here today are brought to us by the Hodling & Co. company out of San Francisco. This is formerly Anchor Spirits, so you may even remember it as that. And they are some really premier importers and also makers of some really fine spirits. So all three of these come out of their portfolio. First one we're going to be doing today is Writer's Tears, and this is one I'm really excited about, Tony. So this is the Writer's Tears Copper Pot. Now, what does that mean? It's actually done in a copper pot. It's actually triple distilled in a copper pot. So let's pour a little bit here for us. Go.
Okay,
Thanks.
there you go.
So one of the nice things about this whiskey, it's a triple distilled whiskey, so the more you distill something, then the smoother it gets, the fruitier it gets, right? Now, let's kind of just nose this, Tony, and let's just kind of see what we pick up. One thing about nosing whiskey is you don't really want to stick your nose deep into this glass. So it's not wine, it's like 14-15%. This is now minimum 40% alcohol, and you've got alcohol that's just streaming out of that glass. So you want to make sure that you kind of respect that by just wafting it underneath the nose like that. Keep your mouth open. That'll kind of activate your entire nasal passage, and it'll kind of keep the burn from going. And boy, what are you picking up from that? That's like awesome.
Yeah, I have the. I'm getting these grassy notes, huh?
Grassy notes. So that's key for this particular whiskey, the grassy notes. I'm getting the grassiness. I'm also getting some nice little, like a little touch of vanilla here. Maybe even a little touch of honey in there, right?
That's what I got to get the honey too.
And there's some fruit in there too. I haven't really been able to nail that down, but there's some fruitiness in here. So that's really key. So why is he getting the grassy note? So the grassy note is about what this is made of. So there are two types of whiskey that are kind of very popular in Ireland. One is a single malt, and that means it's 100% malted barley. That's where the fruitiness is coming from. The other whiskey is called an Irish pot still whiskey. And an Irish pot still whiskey, they're using malted barley and unmalted barley. And it's that unmalted barley, the raw barley, that's kind of giving that grassiness. And we're going to pick up a couple things when we taste this as well. So cheers to you, and let's actually give this a little run for its money, huh?
Boy, that's nice, huh?
Mm.
You understand now why Irish whiskey's flying off the shelves, huh?
Why it's so popular, yeah. It's incredibly easy to drink. However, it's easy to drink, but it doesn't dumb down the flavors. The flavors are big, they're bold, they're in there. There's that fruit, there's that grassiness again, like some hay notes. Also on the finish and on the palate, you get a nice kind of like an oiliness, like it really kind of spreads out.
No burn at all.
No burn at all.
Quite smooth.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. That's that malted barley and unmalted barley. So this is from the Walsh Distillery, and what they're doing is that they are combining two different styles of whiskey, the single pot still whiskey from Ireland and the single malt. And they're getting this perfect balance right here. So Writer's Tears, I know a lot of people know the Writer's Tears brand, which comes from there. And this particular one here is called the Copper Pot. So hope you enjoy this as well. So the next whiskey we are going to have today is a Scotch whiskey. Now, whiskey was invented in Ireland. So if you ever get into an argument between a Scotsman and an Irishman, just tell them that the Irish invented it, but the Scots perfected it, right? And this is a great example of it as well. So there's a bunch of different types of Scotch whiskeys. There's actually, it's very confusing. There are 2 types and 5 styles, right? And then there are 3 of them have the same word in it. So think of Scotch whiskey as 2, 5, and 3. 2 styles of whiskey. Malt whiskey, made of 100% malted barley in a pot still. And grain whiskey, which is made of multiple grains inside of one of those big industrial column stills. That's the 2 types. Then you take those and you combine them and you get 5 different categories. One is a malt whiskey from a single distillery. That is single malt whiskey, right? And we're going to be tasting one of those. The other one is single grain whiskey, right? Grain whiskey from a single distillery. Now, if you take those and you combine them together, you have blended Scotch whiskey. That's the biggest category of Scotch whiskey. That's your Dewar's, J&B, Cutty Sark, Johnny Walker, all of those, right? About 90% of all the whiskey that comes out of Scotland comes out as a blended Scotch. Then the other 2 categories are blended malt, when I'm just taking single malt whiskeys and blending those together with no grain whiskey. And then a very rare category is blended grain Scotch whiskey, in which I'm blending just grain whiskeys from different grain distilleries and no malt whiskey. And the reason it's confusing is because I've used the word blend 3 different ways. Blended malt, blended Scotch, and blended grain. So that's where the confusion is at, right? So the whiskey that we're going to be talking about today is actually a single malt whiskey. It's this guy right here. This is Old Pulteney, and it's like really is one of my absolute favorites. This is the 12-year-old. And remember, whenever you see a number on a label, that's the birthday of the youngest whiskey that's in here. So there are probably some 13, 14, and 15-year-old whiskeys in here that they've blended together from the same distillery, right? All single malts, in order to get the 12-year-old. So let's pour a little bit of this in the glass and let's see what we come up. Take a look at that really beautiful gold, light gold color of that. There's a clue to the whiskey as soon as you see the color, assuming that there's no caramel coloring in there. And I know for a fact that there's no caramel coloring in this particular whiskey, even though in Scotland it's legal to do so, right? But one of the things that the color is going to talk to you about is the way that it was matured. And you can tell right here that this has been matured in ex-bourbon barrels. However, you figure 12 years old and that's the darkest it gets. Well, there's a reason for that, because they're not using first fill ex-bourbon barrels where some of the bourbonness and some of the color impact and flavor impact of what was in there, the bourbon, has an influence on them. They're using a second fill, so that means it's been tamped down a little. And the reason they do that is because they want the fruity floralness of the whiskey itself to actually shine and then be shaped by the whiskey instead, right? So they're really looking for that balance with the fruit of the distillate to come out. So what we should be getting here is absolutely what we would expect. There's a breadiness to it. There's a kind of like a scones in here. There is definitely some what you would call orchard fruit, kind of like peach or a little bit of apricot in there. And there's something else in here. We're going to talk about that in a second, that some people pick it up on the nose, some people pick it up on the palate, others don't pick it up until the finish, but we're going to mention that. I just want you to kind of look for this mystery type of an ingredient here. So really pretty. Let's have a sip. The word for this is elegant, light, and dancy on the mouth. This, I believe, is 40 ABV. So it's got structure, it's got balance, and even though it's only at 40 ABV, there's a big mouthful of flavor. There's almost a juiciness on this as well. And what I like about this is that secret little ingredient that I told you about, which is a little bit of a salt air in here, like a saline note, right? Now, where does that all come from? First of all, let's take a look at the shape of that bottle, because there's a clue right here, and there's a fabulous story about this. Old Pulteney comes from a distillery up in the top of Scotland in a little fishing village called Wick. Now, up until about 40 years ago, there was no roads going up there, so the only way to get up there was actually by boat. And back in the early part of the 20th century, when they started the distillery, they had to sail down to the other part of Scotland, order their stills, and then sail the stills back up. They got the stills outside of the old, centuries old stone barn that they were going to make into a distillery, and then they found something really terrible. They had mismeasured the inside of the barn, and it was too short for the size of the stills that they had made. And they made this fateful decision. They cut the neck off right here at the pot to get it inside. Now, the reason they had spec'd such a tall neck was because they knew that the more reflux that the spirit gets by going up and down all of that copper, the lighter and fruitier that the spirit was going to be. And now they were without that. So this is what they did instead. This is so cool. They actually took that extra copper and they formed this big ball, which is right there on top of the pot, and then put the neck on top of it. And that allowed the spirit to get all of that extra reflux and copper contact. And that's why we have this really beautiful, fruity elegance to this whiskey ever since. So, necessity is a mother sometimes, and that was actually a perfect example of necessity actually kind of driving an innovation, because now in Scotland, if you go to the top still makers, that boil ball is actually now one of 4 different styles that you can order from them. So this is Old Pulteney 12. Light, fruity, a little touch of saline note, and absolutely a delicious single malt whiskey. Okay, so we started in Ireland, we went to Scotland, and now we're going to end up in the United States and maybe what is one of the most popular spirits of all time, which is bourbon, American bourbon. Now, a couple things to know about bourbon. It can be made anywhere in the United States. So not just in continental United States, but you can make it up there in Alaska, down there in Hawaii, and not just in Kentucky. So bourbon is a United States product. Now, what's interesting is that most of the bourbons that are coming out there right now are actually not even made in Kentucky, but they're made in a place called MGP, right? And that is an old Seagram's distillery that's in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. All of your ryes are coming out of there. They're pretty much defining a lot of the taste style. And it's fantastic because it allows creative blenders and creative distillers to choose particular barrels out of there, or even have the factory make them and then blend them to their spec. And in a way, it's kind of like a contract distillery. And that brings us to our next whiskey, which is Hirsch. Now, what's really cool about Hirsch is that it's got this really cool backstory. A.H. Hirsch used to be a salesman for bourbon back in the days of post-prohibition, and opened up a distillery in Pennsylvania. Of course, this is actually one of the oldest distilleries in Pennsylvania and the United States, and then started making this whiskey, and then cut production in 1974. I'm just going to give a shout out to Chuck Cowdery, is that actually what you want to do is find that book, The Best Bourbon You'll Never Taste, and it's the history of the Hirsch bourbon. Okay, so those are kind of unicorns you're never going to find. But what Hodling has done is taken that style, and they've recreated that style and relaunched Hirsch here as the Hirsch Horizon. Now, what's really cool, and you got to give them props for this, is they're totally 100% transparent about where this whiskey comes from, and that's really key. Okay, so right on the back right here, it says that it was distilled in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. But they give you the mash bill of the 2 types of whiskeys that they blended. One is 94% of what's in here is aged 5 years old and 4 months, and the mash bill is 75% corn, 21% rye, and then a little bit, 4% barley. That's what we call a standard bourbon mash bill, right? Or a recipe of grains. The other one right here, they blend it with barrels that about 6% of the entire blend that are minimum 6 years old. In fact, this one here is 6 years old and 2 months. And this is a mash bill of 60% corn, 36% rye, and 4% barley. So that's what's known as high rye. So what does rye do for us? It really kind of gives us that really beautiful floral, tingly spiciness, and it counterbalances the sweetness and the unctuousness of the corn. So let's pour a little bit of Hirsch bourbon right here. Yeah, beautiful, kind of a russet brown color that you can see on that. That's really gorgeous. I love this new design. This is really great too. I mean, the relaunch of this with this beautiful square shouldered bottle, and that color blue is really awesome as well. So yeah, boy, so that's bourbon, right? So, and you can get a little bit of that spicy note and the bready note, and rye bread, yeah, that's not too far from what I'm getting there. And there's a little bit of fruitiness, and there is definitely some rich kind of remember the caramel color, caramel candies that had the little foam, the little cream center in it. That's kind of like what I'm picking up off the top of this, and there's a little bit of apricot right there too. So you got a nice complex nose. This cascades in flavor. This is the key to all great whiskeys. Think of yourself getting on a fun ride, and you have no idea where you're going to go when you get it, but you're going to be in fun. Like you're on the Jackrabbit or the Cyclone, right? And it's going to be a great ride, and then you go through it. It's like, wow, man! And then all these spills and turns and swirls. And then you end up at the end, and it's like, yeah, that was like fantastic, and it all kind of fit. That's a good bourbon. That's a good whiskey. It's a wild ride. There's a bunch of different surprises that happen, but at the end, when you get to the end, it said, oh, it all kind of made sense. It all kind of fit together. That's balance, and that's complexity. I'm still tasting this right now, so that's a nice long finish, a nice unctuous, rich palate on there as well. When I was drinking it, all of those beautiful flavors, the caramel sort of morphed into the fruitiness, the sweetness of the corn and the fruitiness that was coming out of there. There's only a little bit of barley in here, and that's mostly used just for the fermentation. So what I'm really getting is the impact of those ryes, and that's what's allowing this long, spicy finish on this. So it's an absolutely stunning whiskey. So congratulations for buying it. So that was our whiskey tasting. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did. I mean, the one thing about whiskey is that it's always better with friends, right? And sharing it with someone. So I want to thank Tony Russo and Aries Wine and Spirits for having us here, and I want to thank the Hodling & Co. people out in San Francisco for their support of this. And remember, this is the complete whiskey course, and you can go ahead and feel free to leave a good review for it if you really like it. And so listen, my name's Robin Robinson. It was great drinking with you today, and enjoy it. Cheers.